Welcome to Audio Gyan with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers, and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Here's your host, Kedar Nimkar.
Today I have Dhaval Ashar with us on AudioGyan. Dhaval is a manager in urban transport and road safety team at the World Resources Institute India. His work integrates transport engineering and urban design to improve safety and sustainability in cities. Dhaval manages road safety projects in Mumbai, Bandung, Bangkok, to name a few. Today we are here to discuss design of the last 2 decades of transport in Mumbai and hopefully to gain some brilliant insights from Dhaval about transport at large, transport design at large. So thank you, Dhaval, for giving your time. It's a real pleasure to have you on AudioGyan.
Thank you for having me, Kedar. Thank you. I'm very obliged.
Oh, thanks. The main premise is about transport design and whatever insights. I've come up with few questions and hoping to document Mumbai's last 2 decades, how Mumbai has handled transport or how transport has handled Mumbai, and being a cluster of islands, what are the challenges and so on and so forth. So I'll start by asking, I mean, I can't start from the wheel, but if you can give like a brief history of transportation in Mumbai and how are these? Are there any departments within the transport ecosystem? How are these categorized? How does a local commuter perceive it? क्योंकि एज अ लेमैन मुझे तो एक बस होता है, ट्रेन होता है, एंड आर दीज ऑल्सो सिमिलरली कैटेगराइज्ड इंटरनली फ्रॉम अ गवर्नमेंट स्टैंड पॉइंट? कौन से एंटिटीज होते हैं? तो इफ यू कैन स्टार्ट बाय दैट एज अ बेस एंड लेट्स सी.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kedar. So, okay, transport in Mumbai, if you ask me the broad question. So essentially what is transport, right? It is sort of moving people and moving services, right? So people and goods and then the services. Now, Mumbai is not that old a city, right? It's what, 300, maybe 350 years old. And a lot of our infrastructure, I think, as is widely known, is from the time the British were managing the city, right? So the railway trains were those that were built by them, etc., and subsequently, of course, sort of taken over by the Indian Railways and then grown across 3 different lines. So broadly, how does Mumbai travel as of sort of right now is one by the train, which is in technical terms, it's called the modal share, is basically of all the trips that happen in the city. Now, what is a trip? I think I should just simply sort of explain what a trip is. So a trip is an individual going from point A to point B with a certain purpose. Right. So if you're going,
there has to be a purpose, huh?
I mean, of course, you're sort of just strolling out is also a purpose. I'll tell you why there has to be, because it just helps categorizing. But the point is, so if you're going from point A to point B, that should be recorded as one trip. You come back from point B to point A, that is trip number 2. The reason is that if I am estimating volumes, if you are going from point A to point B, let's say in a car, you are going from one side of the road and you are, in terms of volume, one what is called a passenger car unit, or one car, let's say. When you're coming back, you're another car, like you are one more car. If you're doing that in the same hour, for me the number is 2 in terms of volume. So it could be 200 meters you're going to get a bread even. So that is a trip. Now, I think in Mumbai, and please excuse me, I'm not going to have very exact numbers today, but we are looking at over 15 million odd trips that the city of Mumbai makes. And where am I quoting this from is from a study that the Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai, the MCGM or BMC commonly known, did in 2014, called the Comprehensive Mobility Plan. So where they did a lot of surveys and then, through surveys estimated trips. Of course, a lot of extrapolation was there. in that. But of that, over about 70+% commutes by the train. Wait.
Okay.
So a large part of Mumbai travels by the train, right? Then you have the BEST or the buses, followed by IPTs or the taxis and the auto rickshaws, and now the Ubers and the Olas, followed by motorcycle, followed by car. Now all of this that I said is just the motorized trips. In Mumbai, at least the study estimated that about 51% of all trips that happen in Mumbai happen on foot. So
51%.
yeah, close to 51% of all trips. And like I said, right, what a trip is you going from A to B. So if you are going from your house to your office, and let's say you take the train, that is still one trip, but that trip has 3 legs. You going from your house to your station is the first leg. You could go anywhere. You could go sort of by foot, you could go by a auto, bus, bike, maybe even drive there. Then you take the train, that is the second leg, and then you kind of whichever mode you use for your last leg. So largely Mumbai travels like this. What has happened now is that, Mumbai always traveled like this.
Sorry, Dhaval, to interrupt, but if we can also give, I'm hoping that the listeners are from Mumbai, but if we can also give a circumference, like, because Thane is not technically considered as Mumbai. So is there any boundary?
Yes.
This will just help
It
understand.
is a very good, thanks for bringing this up actually. So when we are talking in the context of Mumbai, we are talking in the MCGM limits or the BMC limits. Now, what are the BMC limits? They from Daisar Cheknaka south, right? So, and here to Mulund Cheknaka and to Chembur.
Okay.
So that, and then the island city, of course, which is very well known. Or which used to be the Bombay then. So we are talking right now in that context. When you think about MMR or the Mumbai metropolitan region, that is a completely different ball game. MMR is about 9 municipalities, and so MMR is huge, right? So it has your Thane, Vasai Virar Municipal Corporation, KDMC, the Kalyan Dombivli, Mira Bhayandar Corporation, Thane, Navi Mumbai, which else? I forget, but MMR is huge. Right now, what I'm telling you is Mumbai. If I have to say MMR, it's very hard to sort of categorize MMR, although they are actually just about to release a study called the Comprehensive Traffic and Transportation Study, which is for the entire MMR. And MMRDA, which is the Mumbai Metropolitan Regional Development Authority, that is the authority that is leading that study. Okay, so coming back to Mumbai, so this is how we always traveled. Okay, this is pretty much how the entire city always traveled. A few percentages here and there, percentage points here and there will differ from back in the day. Our pedestrian population or the number of pedestrian trips was always the highest. Rail sort of people traveling by railway was, in terms of motorized trips, was always the highest. Right now, actually, and it's not a surprise to people like us that we sort of keep talking to, but personal automobiles, if you actually take a percentage of all the trips, we are talking barely 5 to 7% of all trips happen or used to happen. This is pre-pandemic, of course, by personal automobiles. Right now, we are in a very different stage. I don't even know how to say, because we are not traveling by trains right now, then not everyone is traveling, so we'll mostly talk pre-pandemic when we are talking numbers. Anyway, so this is how we always traveled. But so interestingly, after the year 2000, or actually after the year 1999, I think, which was when Mr. Nitin Gadkari was the transport minister in the state, that was the time when Mumbai's infrastructure transformation began.
Okay.
Yeah. So since the year 1999, Mumbai has seen massive investment and like a lot of infrastructure upgradation or addition, I should say. We've seen over 60 flyovers.
Wow.
So all the flyovers that you talk on, Ambedkar Road to the Eastern Express Highway to the Western Express Highway, a lot of east-west flyovers. Then the JVLR or the Jogeshwari Vikhroli Link Road, the Santa Cruz Chembur Link Road, the Eastern Freeway. What else has been built? And the sort of the pride of Mumbai, the photo that is yes,
Worli Sea Link.
right, the Bandra Valley ceiling in 2010. So all of this was built since the year 1999. So we are talking about the last 20 years is when all of this, and I think over 15,000 crores have been spent since then in building that. Now, what happened is it's not like the railway infrastructure didn't sort of upgrade. It did, right? I mean, new stations came up, some stations were widened, new footover bridges came up, etc., etc. But there was never a large sort of boost or upgradation in our rail infrastructure. There were plans that were made and remade and made and remade to sort of elevate the line. So there was a plan for the Churchgate Virar line where that would go sort of grade separated. So you would have 1+1 of that. And all of these plans were there. They did execute a few plans like the doubling of lines beyond the Borivali up to Virar or the Hanu. Some lines were increased on the eastern and the central and the harbour, etc. But nothing major, nothing massive. What happened though is that we saw also, and perhaps as a result of all of these large road infrastructures, we saw a huge surge in automobiles. Right, so the curve is literally exponential. This happened. Second is that we have perpetually been under construction. If you are from Mumbai or if you are ever in Mumbai, between October and May, you are never too far from a construction site. When I say a construction site, most imaginations are these bigger construction sites of buildings and highways, which right now you are never too far off. But even a drain being constructed or a new sewage pipeline or anything is a construction site, right? Small or big. You're not very far from that. Now, I have some of these sort of, this is what the way I kind of keep thinking and making connections is. So interestingly, what happened is, while we built all these large infrastructure, right? So we made the Eastern Freeway, we made a large Santa Cruz Chembur or a JVLR or all of these flyovers. Of course, a lot of traffic was going to grow. Now, it's easy to say that building all the flyovers on Western Express Highway will just bring the traffic down. That's not how it happens, right? Your traffic will come on the highway, but eventually they have to come on the city roads or inner city roads to kind of go to their points of origin or destination. Anybody does just a basic Google search of all the roads that were taken up in Mumbai, and I'm saying barring the highways and these new infrastructure for upgradation, you will find only one word for it. Is that SV Road widened, LBS Marg widened, Linking Road widened. We had to widen pretty much every city road to the extent that you could. Now, widening city streets is not as easy, right? You cannot break buildings or you cannot break old structures. Very old structures, if in your development plan, and many in Mumbai are going into what commonly called road cutting, notices are served. If the compensations and all of those things are mutually well agreed upon, fine, parties move on, those parts are cut and the road there is widened. If not, then it goes into litigation. When it goes into litigation, it goes on for many, many years. So that has happened. Everything has happened here. What happened though is that when we started widening the roads, it's not like our arterial roads like SV Road or Linking Road or LBS Marg, etc. are these highways that are access controlled. Our arterial, or the way we call them, main roads, are also roads that have shop fronts, that have building entrances, that have malls, that have like all of these land uses just adjacent and directly accessible from these roads, right? So if you have locations that are going to attract people, people will come in various different modes. You know, there will be a bunch of people walking to that place, bunch of coming by auto rickshaws, taxis, or their own cars, etc., etc. Right? And then so then you have all of these other issues cropping up, like you'll have so much more parking requirement. You will in Mumbai, we never have enough parking. It's sort of, I think everybody knows and agrees, but how are you going to have that much parking, right? I mean, it's just not possible. So there is always this issue. So I don't know, I mean, you see, so you widened the road, right? What also unfortunately happened is the footpath does sort of, you know, when we talk about widening the road, the focus is always on the carriageway, as it probably should be, you know, from a government point of view, because if your cars are not moving, the world comes down upon them. If your pedestrians are having some issue or the other, walking, maneuvering, etc., fine, you raise those issues, but the world doesn't come out down on them. It is believed that they will figure out a way. Car chock-a-block not figuring out a way is news. It's perhaps national news. It's like bigger, like it's a big problem for anyone in the administration. And then, you know, we have all these vendors, etc., etc. So somehow I feel like in the last 20 years, no, I mean, our lived experience has really changed, and not in the good sort of way, is because, you know, we really widened the streets. It's not like the entire part of the widened street. Next time I hope that, you know, after our conversation, anytime you go anywhere, just notice anything on SV Road or Linking Road or anything, not every inch of the widened street is going to be used for through traffic.
Yeah, absolutely not. In fact, I've observed that it's used for parking, maybe like the samne ka building ka car.
Correct. All kinds of things happen. You know, samne ke building ka cars se leke, you know, buses se leke, autos, taxis, everything. And
in
then,
fact, I recently saw it big time, recently as in before the pandemic, near the post Borivali, they have created one big metro and there is a wide street down also. So that entire belt is just parking. I mean, I sometimes wonder if we just get rid of these cars, like more cars can come which are actually running.
Yeah, so good that you bring this up. That doesn't happen, and that will never happen. You know, vehicles, how much ever we claim that our vehicles move very differently from those in the Western countries, where, you know, you don't have a heterogeneous mix. What is a heterogeneous mix is all different kinds of auto rickshaws and bikes and this and that, where you don't have, where they start moving in files, etc., and so therefore it's easy. Whatever you say, our vehicles, despite being heterogeneous, they also move in a certain pattern. Okay, funnel out, funnel in, funnel out, funnel in, funnel out, funnel in doesn't work. Vehicles move in a file. Of course, you know, when there is an intersection or something, that's when you will see everybody just pile. That's where you will see a lot less parking happen also. But I call, or it's not just me, it's very commonly called, these extra spaces are very commonly called as residual spaces. So if it is not moving in a file, if any space is outside that file, that space will lend itself to all of these things only. You know, so those cars over there, there's one very easy way to move those cars out of there. Just move the barricades there. But if you, or place a barricade there, the moment you place a barricade there, there will be some additional space that will become residual. You'll find cars going and parking there every day. And, you know, this is something that anybody can observe over the next 2-3 years while the metro is in construction. You'll see cars just parked in the middle of the road on the side, you know, divider side where the barricades and all. It's just, that's how it is going to happen always. And I'm okay, you know, I mean, at some point the metro barricades will go away. At some point the road will become sort of straighter, etc. But because we are a funnel in, funnel out, sort of these bottlenecks at every place, what happens is our lived experience is very compromised. So, you know, your edges are not only by vehicles. You have parking, you have vending, You have people walking because there are so many people that always walk in Mumbai. Thankfully, we still walk. You have so many other uses, right? You have utilities, you have either a pole springing up or something or the other. Now, what you have is a mix and match in all our inner streets. What's also happening is that now the walking experience, besides being compromised, is also a very unsafe experience now. So it's I know people who still say that in places like Teen Hat Naka, etc., in Thane, sometimes a lot of senior citizens or just old people have to take an auto rickshaw to cross the road.
Oh shit.
Imagine reaching this point in time where you have to take an auto rickshaw to just cross a road. A lot of people are doing that, and a lot of people are actually not even then coming out. Today is actually when we are talking today is that World Disability Day or something.
Oh,
And
okay.
they say that there are, I think this was 2011 census time, or about 6% or so people are disabled. And disability is not just one kind of disability. Okay, when we talk disabled, it's all kinds of disability. You are literally excluding these people from your city. You are excluding children, or I'm not saying you are excluding, they are being excluded from the city. Old people are not able to maneuver, right? You are then going to want to, so see, the whole point is that roads are never for cars, it's streets are for people. Even if anyone makes roads for cars, they will still have people. So now this is where the confusion is, right? That it's a road, but it's not just for cars, it's a road for people, and then it's just something is not coming together and the experience is compromised. This reflects in our crash data. About 51%, and this is consistent across sort of at least this last 7 years that I am working in this space and looking at data. About 51% of all fatal crashes that happen, fatal crashes are crashes where there was an accident and somebody died, are of the pedestrians.
And this is 51% have fatal.
Over 50%, just you
Okay.
can say over 50% that died in road accidents in Mumbai were pedestrians, consistently across so many years. So it's just see, basically the street is what shapes your sort of lived experience. Okay, is streets are or roads are not just conduits for traffic, or as we sort of commonly say. um, it's streets are for people. Streets are where people sort of, a lot of them live, a lot of them celebrate, do business, they rest, they rejuvenate, etc, etc. So, and Mumbai,
But this is how I mean, this is sort of like a different perspective, because what I thought is street is for travel and commute, and then the government or the organizing, like whoever is it, has to create spaces for rejuvenation and celebration and stuff like that. So is it because it's Mumbai, or is it
no,
like a accepted thing?
it is see, that's the thing, right? Is that it's very it's sort of, it's very debatable. What I'm saying, I'm able to justify, but if you take a position saying that no, roads are for cars as it should be, you will keep justifying your position, and perhaps we'll never meet somewhere, which is fine. But here's the point, right? I mean, is you keep creating these gardens, etc. Fine, but not everybody is going to go and just want to walk in a garden, right? Is that your idea of recreation? You're just going to want to go buy some groceries, and through that just feel like, oh, I just want to go out and come, I'll just go get buy something, or just a walk down the street, etc. I mean, these are common things, right? Just a walk down the street. It's you can, I mean, have a recreational walk down the street, or just about anything. What I'm saying is that I'm not saying that streets should be public spaces. I'm saying streets are public spaces. What it needs to kind of, what one needs to therefore understand then is that what is the idea of a public space? Our conventional idea of public spaces is the gardens, or in Mumbai you would say the promenades or the beaches, etc. But that's not there. I mean, public spaces where there is public, right? I mean, so just broadening the definition of the public space a little bit, you have streets are public spaces. Streets, I mean, tell me which street is only for cars. Fine, the eastern freeway is only for cars, but how many other uses exist on the street, right? Tomorrow, if you're going to let's say just want to make the street for car, which actually somehow has happened now, sadly, then what happens to all the other uses? You know, what happens to all your vendors or even your street side businesses that are legitimate? Even, you know, you're sort of,
Hmm.
and then, you know, all of your spaces that were then lively spaces or just live spaces will then replace are actually then getting replaced by parking, right? And then
Hmm.
those spaces are becoming, and this is a very technical terms in this context, they are becoming dead spaces. Dead spaces are dangerous spaces. Dead spaces are where crimes happen. Dead spaces are where, you know, I mean, like women will probably feel the most unsafe going, and you know, a lot of them will not go. I will not let my children go. I mean, my experience in Mumbai growing up was very different. It makes me really sad that my child will perhaps never have that kind of experience. A lot of my experience was shaped uh, by the street, right? I mean, we could just about go anywhere
Hmm.
and
I
were
think
not.
what your approach or what your take is more on the realistic side. I mean, yes, there are these traditional definitions, but these are more ideological or like go by the book type of definition. But real life, अगर उतरेंगे road पर तो this is what the practical situation is.
Yeah, this is one way to think about it. The other is, you know, there is always, and for years this has been the case. You know, if you, this is, so I don't know if you've heard these two names, Jane Jacobs and Robert Moses.
Uh, Jacobs is the eyes on the streets guy.
The woman, Jane Jacobs, is the eyes in the street, you know,
Yeah.
who imagines the streets in a certain way, who imagines city life shaped by its streets and transport in a certain way. And then there was this guy called Robert Moses,
Hmm.
whose imagination did also end up shaping a lot of New York as it used to be then.
Hmm.
So this conflict has always been there. So there is always a set of people whose definitions are what I am saying right now, and then there is always a set of people whose definitions are just roads for cars as it should be. So
Hmm.
this is a age old conflict. Okay, and it's, yeah, it's pretty interesting. But what I'm trying to say is that, you know, in building all of this infrastructure and then in these widening these arterial roads, what's happened is we've really squeezed people out of spaces to walk. We've also sort of, you know, I mean, we have just illegitimized so many people, so many more vendors, etc. Anything that comes in the way of perhaps a moving vehicle, or it could not even come in the way, it could just seem like it's in the way but actually not be in the way, is seeming to be illegitimate, Rao. I mean, just so these spaces then start becoming these very unfriendly spaces. Now imagine SV Road and Linking Road, imagine them as 4 lane each side roads. You know, 4 lanes is, when you're talking 4 lanes, it's about how much, 13.5 meters or 14 meters. um, you crossing, if you're going to cross, right, in Mumbai, it's not like we just have to walk in straight line. So much of, there is so much communication across the street, right? You know, right now you're on this side of the street, 15 minutes later you have something to do on the other side of the street. There is so much crossing happening, etc. Imagine you having to cross for about 14 plus 14 for 28 meters. You never get to cross that in one go, right? I mean, and then if you do not have a safe space to stand in the middle, first of all, crossing 14 meters only is a big deal. So the worry is that, you know, the way we have sort of shaped up, or the way I hope we really turn back from here, is a lot of people then get excluded from the city experience. Old people and children mostly, really, and then it just cascades onto pretty much everyone else.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
So
that.
actually, no. So I wanted to ask you then: is this? I mean, you have like seen projects in and worked on projects in Bangkok and other places as well. So उस context में I wanted to ask कि is there a specific challenge with respect to Mumbai? if you zoom out, I mean, at a road level or at a like gully and mohalla level, it's a different story. The problems might remain the same, but if you just zoom out and take a like a bird's eye view of Mumbai, are there any other specific challenges,
You
and
know,
how we have handled them as well also?
this is an interesting question. Thank you for sort of, you know, letting me zoom out here. You know, I mean, Bangkok on Google Maps in a peak hour, if you see, you'll probably see just the whole of Google Maps red. I remember, I mean, just having to go, if we had to go from one side to another by car, it used to be a nightmare.
Hmm.
Uh, there were those, can't remember those trains, etc. If it's connected by that, then I'm very happy to go. It did have its own set of challenges. You know, walking was a concern, crossing even more because just streets wider, etc. But you know what I feel like, and this is just I'm speaking now out of worked experience, and this is I feel like where we are right now, no, has happened very organically. I
Hmm.
would place the blame, like the big blame, on anyone actually consciously making it hard for pedestrians. I feel like it's happened very organically. One, of course, I feel like the priorities were very misplaced back then in the last 20 years when, you know, we just invested pretty much everything on road infrastructure. And then what we got in return was just more traffic. So, you know, that exercise didn't work out for us. And we are finally realizing that in terms of public transport, what we added was only one metro line from Ghatkopar to
Andheri. Yeah.
Versova, right? The Ghat Andheri Versova Ghatkopar line. Right now, of course, we are seeing all of these metro construction. Hopefully, in a decade from now, we should hopefully be in a better place. Um, but I feel like it happened very organically. I feel like, you know, all spaces that were accessible started to become inaccessible very organically, starting with just the pressure of the automobiles widening the streets. So the idea was to just widen the street as much as possible. Why? Because traffic was just growing in Mumbai, right? The trips were not growing, just the sort of
No, but how do these decisions are also taken? I mean, at that point in time where a flag is raised saying that okay, the traffic or the number of trips have increased by X%, or the traffic or the time taken to commute has increased by X%, thereby signaling कि बस traffic बढ़ गया है. Now, so that is the problem. Now there could be multiple solutions. Now, why is it that widening is the only solution which was
no,
taken?
that's a good question. I should have addressed. So there are studies that back it, right? I mean, they basically they'll have studies done. This is the transport planner's job. Is you basically get a study. So we have all protocols in place that way. It's not like they are haphazard decisions of just you know, somebody sitting somewhere in, let's say, a municipal commissioner's office or a chief engineer roads and being like, oh, I want to widen this. There are studies that suggest that, and then there is a decision that follows. That's why I said, you know, um, there is a set of kind of professionals who think a certain way, and then there are a set of professionals who think another way. So, you know, there is always that. And the just see, if see the Mumbai transport problem, no, and now we are it's not like we are a unique city or whatever, and just many cities in India for that matter, our transport problem is pretty sorted. You know, we now have enough experience from outside and from within also to know what our problem is, and solutions are that way fairly low cost. But
Hmm.
then, you know, it's not like that's not how it works, right? I mean, big projects are big ambitions. You know, big ambitions are bigger projects, sort of. So all of those things are happening. You know, the coastal road is happening. I mean, it's there is data is either side. You know, I mean, it's fairly debatable. It's something I could prove that it's not needed. Maybe you could
Hmm.
prove that it's needed, and we'll kind of keep debating forever. But big projects are sort of ambitious projects. You know, big projects, many ways they say it's a sign of development, etc., etc.
Can you give any example of big projects which we are talking about apart from, if I'm assuming metro is like one big one?
So metro is the big project that is public transport, right? But our flyovers then were very big projects, right? I don't know if you know, were you in Bombay at the time when just all of these flyover constructions began across the city, or
Uh,
even at the time of Bandra Valley Sea Link?
yeah, I've been on and off, as in like because I was in Ambernath for some time and then Bangalore in some time. So I've been on and off. I vaguely remember the JJ flyover also when it
Right.
was being
That's
pitched. Or yeah.
right. So, the flyovers were big projects then. I mean, now the one flyover also seems like a really small project in
Hmm.
in comparison to what big projects now are. But, all of those flyovers or the Eastern Freeway that extends from PD de Mello Road all the way north on the eastern side to
Hmm.
these so these were big projects. I keep thinking, have you heard of Ambedkar Road or Western Express Highway? Have you been to Western Express Highway in Mumbai?
Yeah, yeah.
I often keep thinking, it's not like metro technology was very old at the time. What would have happened had we built metro on the Western Express Highway or the Ambedkar Road? Our city's lived experience would have been really different. It would just have been very different. It would become a much more sort of people friendly space, a lot of people traveling sort of by the mass transit, uh, thereby lesser cars, etc., etc.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, those are, anyway, what I'm saying is, you could solve Mumbai's problems, at least on paper, also in many ways, practically, even as if you had just more bus infrastructure, right? If you had exclusive bus lanes. I'm not saying you shouldn't build roads. Of course, roads are important. Roads are important to create a network, to complete a network, etc. So, the way we kind of think about what is required to do is about three things, right? So one is that you have to complete the network, and there are studies that are being done on that. So transportation studies are being done by cities all the time. So all of Mumbai's projects also that were done on back of studies.
Hmm.
It's not like somebody someday just got up to be like, oh, ye karna hai, let's do it types. No, I mean, there were studies done, those studies justified it, termed those projects feasible, etc. But I mean, what
No,
you could,
but when can I wanted to get into those details if possible, जहाँ पे
yeah,
ये जो studies होते हैं, तो
yeah,
I am very curious to know कि यार अभी ये रोड बना रहे हैं, like say we can take any example of any road. What are the big parameters? एक तो मतलब climatic conditions, topology and those kind of things
yeah,
रहेंगे.
yeah.
दूसरा एक रहेगा कि यार population, मतलब 2020 में, लेकिन 2040 में क्या सिचुएशन रहेगा, उसका भी कुछ एक प्रोजेक्शन रहेगा, राइट?
Yes.
ऐसे कुछ और पैरामीटर्स है विच आर नॉट वेरी commonly known for a layman.
Okay, so good. That's a good question. See, basically, this is how transport planning, if I have to simplify how transport planning will work, is it works on several different scales. Okay. If you are a developer, and if you let's say are building a mall somewhere, okay, it is necessary that you do what is called as a traffic impact analysis study. You will then hire somebody like me to
Hmm.
do a traffic impact assessment. So, when you're a mall, there are sort of certain benchmarks, there are certain standards that I would follow to make assumptions, right? That your mall, based on the square feet of your mall, you will tell me I'm making a mall, this is the square feet, and some of these basic things. Based on that, I will calculate the amount of traffic that will come on the street adjacent to your mall, right? And that's how sort of, you can't just build a mall in a very narrow lane, right? You have to do all of these plans. Now this is one scale. A citywide study, or what I was calling the comprehensive mobility plan that Mumbai did. Now that's a very big study. That's like the BAP of all sort of transport studies. In that, what we do is we divide the whole city into zones.
Hmm.
Okay, so all of those, then the zones are usually also sometimes administrative boundaries, because it's easier to get data, no, according to administrative boundaries. So that transport planning is a four-step process. Okay, it is Ah, man, I'm just forgetting all those 4 steps right now. It is trip generation, trip
Mhm.
distribution, mode split, and trip assignment. So let's
Okay.
go into, if I can take 2 minutes to go into each of them. So trip
Yeah, please.
generation is basically where are trips produced from and where are trips attracted to, right? So you live in Ambernath, for instance, your residential colony will be one zone. Your zone will have productions also and attractions also, right?
Hmm.
So production, I mean, you will get out of your house to go somewhere. That will be a trip produced out of your zone. You
Hmm.
will come back, or somebody else will come into your household or your residential sort of complex or colony. That will be an attraction, right? So your zone is attracting trips and producing trips. Now we sort of, what we will do is we will do surveys, right? So what surveys will we do is we will do these household surveys where we will ask people about their daily trips.
Hmm.
Okay, so I will ask you to record your trips, etc., or just get a trip diary. Now, I will get this from a set of people. So, of course, you have to set up these surveys. You have to kind of create the sample, right, sampling method, and all of those things. Without going into those details, I will do these surveys. I will know where the trips are happening right now, right? So that then becomes my base model. So I know what is happening right now. Then
Hmm.
I will kind of then move into different things. So that is the generation part. Then I go into the distribution part. In trip distribution, I so trips that are produced from your zone or your colony, 50% will go in one direction, 30% will go here, and 20% will go there. This will happen for every zones in productions and attractions, right? So then I know that, hey, these trips are happening. Then there will be what is called as a modal split. Okay, so of the 50% that trips that take the Ambernath highway, let's say to go to Mathiran, there is one way to go to Mathiran from Ambernath.
Hmm.
50% of all trips happen from your colony to go to Mathiran. Now, of the 50% trips, what percentage is happening by cars, bikes, ghoda gadi, bel gadi, whichever, buses, whatever
Hmm.
mode, right? In my survey, I will have asked you all those questions. Where, like, what are your trips in the day? So I will draw all this from my surveys only. So, I get now the mode split. Okay.
Hmm.
The fourth is the assignment. Now, going from Ambernath to Mathiran may be just one road right now, but let's say there are a few other kacha roads also. Now, trip assignment also happens in a certain way, right, or based on certain philosophies. So, what would be your ideal route to go anywhere?
That is asked in the survey.
No, no. So in survey, I'm asking you right now what you take, right? I mean, but I'm saying if I have to assign the trip, I'm saying if
Hmm.
you have to, let's say, go from point A to any point B, what road would you take? Like, what would your decision be influenced by?
Shortest.
Shortest, right? Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Now, when your shortest becomes fully jammed, right? Now you knew it through Google Maps, or just through experience. Ke boss, Tuesday evening 6:30, this road becomes fully packed. Let me take this detour and go. It's still faster,
Hmm.
right? So what happens in trip assignment is that, and all this happens on a model, right? So the model will first assign all trips on the shortest link. Then it will, once the shortest link starts becoming saturated, then it will start distributing trips onto different links. So in this way, what I get is, so I have the base model. I have right now how you do, and then I will start doing projections. I will do obviously start doing projections based on many scenarios. I'll see where the development plan is. I'll see what development is proposed where, what were the past projects, what are ongoing projects, and bunch of these parameters will allow me to do projections, right? After I do projection, I will start assigning trip to every link. Now, what is a link? A link is a road, simply, to just sort of say very simply. I will start assigning these trips. So assigning trips, and I will make projections, right? So I will start getting projected volumes.
Hmm.
By volume, I mean the number of vehicles, or all kinds of vehicles combined. I will start getting those projected volumes for those streets that I will start assigning trips to. Now, once I know right now the Ambarnath to Mathiran road, I know how big a road it is, and there is enough research and we have enough of it documented in codes to tell us what is the capacity of that road. I'm talking purely vehicular, okay? Is that I know that this road is 4 lanes, and I know that these 4 lanes can take up to, one lane can take up to, let's say, 1,000 cars per lane per hour. I know the capacity. Now I also will know the volume. I'll just do a volume count. I'll do a survey and I'll find out the volume. Right. So if the volume is more than the capacity, then there is a problem, right? Then that's a jam. Now, in this large transport planning exercise, when I will project volumes for 2025, 2030, 2035, or 2040, whatever, I know what volume right now, based on my projections, will probably occur in that year. Now, that will then define my projects. You got what
Wow.
I'm saying?
Yeah. This
Study.
was the actual meat which I was looking for.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
like
then that will define my project. Now, what projects should come up really is the judgment of the planner. One school of thought is like, from Ambarnath to Mathiran in the year 2025, there will be X number of X volume, right? Therefore, I will have to provide minimum X capacity or X minus a little, like I will have to provide that much capacity. Depends on how you interpret this. If your volume is going to be all cars, and then if you are going to provide as much capacity for cars only, then you'll have to make the biggest possible road, perhaps even break a mountain. But if you're coming from the school of thought like that, no, it is not about moving cars, it is about moving people, then you will propose a different project.
which could also be that why to go Matheran, probably build something near Kalyan itself,
Exactly.
which is also another way to solve the problem, and that's
Right.
more like decentralization.
That is decentralization, but transport plans will basically work on. So transport plans should inform development plans, but if a development plan is made, then transport plan will have to be made based on what is proposed in the development plan. That is one way. Decentralize. Why should there be this is the problem with the US cities, right? I mean, the US cities, when they started growing across like all of these different radials. And they all ended in what is called a cul-de-sac. So it is impossible to provide public transport to such a sort of city structure, right? And then what happens is that everybody in the morning is coming to the center of the city or the downtown, has to come by cars. There's no other way you can come really. So you have like this heavy traffic in one direction every day, in the morning, and then in the other direction in the evening. Just imagine how much it sort of, how much fuel consumption that is, how much vehicular emissions that is, how much a waste of time that is. You probably like how much of a health problem that can be. If only you would have like just gone to sort of, if you were living in a public transport and walk friendly city, which is any European city. Barcelona and Atlanta, the city of Atlanta in Georgia and Barcelona in Spain, they have the same population. The city area, Atlanta's city area is, I think, 50 times more than Barcelona. And just multiply all of these parameters that I told by 50 in emissions and all of these, by perhaps even 500, between Atlanta and Barcelona. So it's just how you plan your city really kind of shapes your experience.
Yeah, in fact, they can further build on top of by having like a whatever, like this time bound toll charges also. I mean, that's what is done in Singapore, right? Like when you have heavy traffic running on a particular street, the toll at that
Yeah,
road increases.
it is basically congestion tax, that
Yeah.
London has, that Singapore has, that disincentivizes car travel. But as a city and as a government, you should also provide adequate capacity in other modes, which means you should provide adequate public transport capacity. You should have perhaps a decentralized sort of structure. where I don't have to travel way too much long to just access, business and service and this and that. So all of that. So you should provide adequate capacity here. And then, I mean, these congestion taxes and parking, regulating parking is the best way to sort of, if I make it really hard for you to park, you're going to bloody, think many times before you take your car into some place. So parking, so these are all tools, these are what we call them, we call them demand management tools. I play with parking regulations, I play with parking places, etc., and I can manage the demand in that area. Right. So this is also, see, where the school of thought that we come from, and this is sort of even Jane Jacobs, and the difference is that it's important to move people. If you think it's important to move cars, your projects are then going to factor moving cars. If you think it's important to move people, you're going to figure out a way to move people. So it's really all your planning really depends on where you where you stand in this question. I actually did my master's in civil engineering only, in transport planning and engineering in the US, in Virginia Tech. And then I came back here. Immediately, and I mean, I didn't know anything else. But to go and join a transportation consultant. So I was looking to join one, and going around giving interviews. There's one question that will mostly always be asked, and that has a very standard answer. And of course, without naming where I went and who those people and all, the question was that, let's say you had a network of streets or roads, whatever you call it. Okay, just this is very early days, just development is happening there, just buildings are coming, etc. At the time, there is no traffic, right? There is very little traffic, so you don't need to put signals and all those things, correct? You just your vehicles will manage their way around, right? Now let's say 5 years, 7 years, 8 years down, traffic has increased now. So when a lot of traffic increases and meets at an intersection, if there is no regulation at the intersection, then there will be a chock-a-block, right? I mean, who's going to let the other person go and all of those things? That's why we need traffic signals, correct? Now you will place traffic signal at one intersection, you will place traffic signal at another one before that or after that or wherever needed. Now, traffic will increase more and more, right? Depending on how, your transportation planning and your development has been, traffic will increase more.
Correct.
There will come a time when your signals will also not be able to handle the traffic. What I mean by that is, if you are standing at one traffic light at a junction or an intersection, that red light, the queue will go past the previous red light. Now that is called oversaturation in technical terms, but you understood what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
So now what do you do? Right? So just very traditional traffic engineering, man, here you are expected to answer this in many interviews. I'm not implicating really everyone, but just broadly, is, you will then make it a one way. Why will it be good if it's a one way? Case in point is Bangalore. You've been in Bangalore, right?
Yeah.
Residency Road and Richmond Road.
Correct.
They are one ways, right?
Yes.
They are one ways because of this very reason. Because when your road is two way, in one direction, your road can take half the traffic. Now, if I remove the divider and make it full one way, then you can take double the traffic, right? So the traffic that one side of the divider was going and hitting the other red light behind, now because of one way is half now, correct?
Yeah.
But now what will happen is, and I'm not saying anything that is just a tale, right? This is reality. Bangalore, Richmond Road, Residency Road, or FC Road in Pune. I don't know if you've been to Pune.
Yeah.
FC Road or JM Road in Pune, they are all one ways, and they were all two ways at some point. And the reason they have become one ways is this. And many other cities have this really. And
So we are basically, I mean, what I can gather is we're basically duct taping the existing solution, but nobody's thinking grounds up.
So you're basically just loosening your belt. If you want to
Yeah.
do a metaphorical sort of comparison here, you're loosening your belt as you keep growing inches. You are not figuring out ways to become healthier. This is actually the most fitting metaphor. The next, from one way, the next stage is, if you keep losing, if you are following the loosening the belt approach, the next stage is the flyover.
Wow.
But someday that flyover will also get jammed, and
Then the
again,
flyover will become one way.
then flyover will become one way, or engineering allows you to build another flyover over that.
Hmm.
But it's not solving your problem, you're worsening it, right? You're continuously worsening it. So this is the question. Now the trick question in these interviews will be that, okay, now if the flyover is also saturated, technical way of saying it, then what do you do? I was like,
Hmm.
boss, now the belt needs to be tightened. You cannot bloody keep loosening it. You
Yeah.
have to. What do I mean by tightening the belt in this case is, you have to figure out modal shifts. You have to figure out ways to get people out of their cars,
Hmm.
pack them up in some form of public transport, right? And that is how you kind of, then, so that's why, your decision making will be driven by whether you care about moving cars or you care about moving people, implicitly or explicitly. So, our cities have shaped by the former sort of thought, while on the face of it, we all care about moving people. Nobody in Mumbai right now will say, in the administration or in the political sort of polity, that they don't care about. Everyone does. And they actually mean it also. It's just, we have to at some point understand that moving people is more important, and then it has political repercussions. It has many it's not like it's going to transform overnight, but I mean, every city in Europe had gone through these phases at some point, in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And it's not like they are these people friendly cities that they were always like that. They all had an automobile peak and revolution at some point. And then through different, very well documented strategies and changes, they've become more people friendly now. And they are the best destinations for people to go and travel, right? I mean, it's not uncommon to go in a Paris or wherever and be like, today I walked 10 kilometers, I saw all of those things, etc., for those that can afford and go there. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, and that's one thing that makes me very hopeful about Mumbai, is that we are hopefully always going to have these many people walking, and we will have to transform at some
Hmm.
point soon. Even Bangalore and other cities, I mean,
Yeah, Bangalore. In fact, I was in Bangalore and I used to love walking just because of the weather. But
yeah,
with the bikes coming on footpath, the drain holes and all, it has become
yeah,
messy in certain parts. But I believe Jayanagar is still very very comfortable to live. They are like broad footpaths and stuff. So yeah, it's
yeah.
correct.
Yeah, if Jayanagar has that, why does sort of Banshankari or a bit other layout or anything not, or have it now?
Correct.
The central part of Bangalore is actually, so Bangalore mein one sort of revolution of sorts happened when Tender Shore streets came in. So if you see Marks Road now, I think
Hmm.
it's at that junction where there is a school, St. Mark's and Richmond Road.
Hmm.
And St. Mark's Road, Richmond Road, and a lot of these roads now, if you see the footpaths, there are much wider. There's a lot of public space or sort of things to do on those. Those were, so this Tender Shore was a whole thing, where a bunch of people, urban designers, I think activists, and many people got together, advocated with the government. They agreed, and then they constructed that. That was a very good sort of exercise that Bangalore did in terms of transforming streets. Again, it
Hmm.
happened only across, I think, 6 kilometers, and now it's happening to another 60. Bangalore has over 6,000 kilometers, so
Hmm. Hmm.
Delhi
Hmm.
dur hai in that sense.
Yeah, even Church Street is designed very like people friendly first, as in people first. In fact, it's not even like designed for cars now.
Church Street on the weekends is only pedestrian,
Yeah.
and it's pretty wonderful that way. So yeah, it's possible, right? It's possible. What used
Yeah.
to be unimaginable is now for pedestrians, and it's possible. That's what I'm saying. So the world will not come down if you kind of um, take away some space or put the road on a little bit of diet. It will in fact make it much better. Businesses will bloom. There is enough evidence to suggest all of these things, to suggest that your city's pollution goes down, your emissions go down. It's actually the only way, really, sort of. It's the only sustainable sort of way. Of course, you have to think about equity and not sort of think about a very elite way of developing a city only for a certain kind of people. That's one of my biggest problems in the way we often end up talking, and by extension planning. It has to be more equitable. It has to be across all sections of society and road users, of course, but also, so that's the tricky part. But yeah, I mean, we need to get there soon.
Yeah. I think we'll conclude this part, and I'm definitely hoping for one more episode where we talk about safety and more about Mumbai, because this, I believe, has like turned out to be a more
Broad, yeah.
product, which is great for me to start and like be sensitive to these sort of details. And yeah, I mean, it would be great to have you again on the show to talk about safety in the transport system. How is it measured?
Yeah.
What are certain metrics on which you say that this was a successful case study, and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
we should do this again.
No, I'll be very happy to. I actually, there are a lot of stories that I have actually put together. So the where we are, why we are where we are, the question of why we are where we are, is different on different scales. So when you're looking at overall city transport, etc., the macro scale, it's a different answer. But now when we kind of zero down and go into the micro or on the street level, those are like some really interesting stories that I've had the privilege to find out
Definitely.
and kind of see through. Yeah, I mean, just whenever, just let me know. I'll be very happy to discuss.
Superb. All right, Dhaval, thanks for giving your time, and I'm like just preparing for the next one very soon.
Sure.
And it was wonderful talking to you. Thank you for sharing such interesting insights. I mean, like I just love the one way क्यों बनाते हैं वाला funda. So yeah, I've made some notes. I'll put them in the show notes, and yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kedar.
Good. Thanks a lot.
Nice talking to you, and have a good evening.
Yeah, same to you. Bye.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher, or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.